Good morning for those of you just joining us. I'm going to wait a minute or two to let other people join that registered. So just give us a couple minutes to get started. I'm going to, here we go. Let those other people in. I'm going to go over some functionalities of Zoom just so you guys know how it's going to work and the format of the conversation. Let everybody introduce themselves and then get started. So just give me a couple of minutes to let other people join us, and then we'll get started. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Changing my backdrop. Got a little wackadoodle from other events here. Hold on.
You don't want your mom to see your weird skull head thing, Jim. Of all the things, I don't think that bad.
Let's see. Oh, nope, can't use that one. Oh, maybe not that one. Hold on. I not so much that one. Hold on. Definitely not that one.
No, but that seems very, very telling of the times right now, maybe.
Not that one. Sorry, wrong day. Okay, I've got to take care. Oh, boy. There we go. Innocuous. Whew.
It looks sort of apocalypse. Hey, Jim, how are you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. How you doing? Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we're just going to wait another minute or two to get things started. Then we're going to go around and do introductions. I'm going to go over one or two things about how to use Zoom just so people know, and then introduce Jessica and let her take it away. We're going to hold questions till the end. If you do have a question, then you don't want to forget about it, you can put it in the chat so that we come back to it. But I think let's start while we're waiting for people to do introductions. I'm going to while we're doing the presentation, I'm going to put everybody on mute. And then when we're done, it's going to be a short presentation. So then I'll unmute you so you guys can ask questions. So let's go around and do intros. Jim, you want to start since you're unmuted?
Yeah, Jim Glazer, part of an arts community living in Brooklyn, and have some elderly family members, and we've been already talking about this subject, and it's great that I now know somebody who is on top of this with the right kind of attorney who we need to know.
Perfect, thanks. Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself? Oh, I'm going to unmute for you. There we go, I unmuted you. Go ahead. No, for some reason I can't, even after I unmuted you, I can't hear you, Andrew. Is your speaker not working? While you figure that out, I'm going to go over to Stephen. Do you want to introduce yourself, Stephen? Good morning, Stephen. Do you want to introduce yourself? Also not hearing Stephen. How about Suzanne Stern? I'm going to unmute you. Would you like to introduce yourself, Suzanne?
Yes, hello.
Good morning.
I'm also, how are you? Thank you. I'm also very interested in the topic. I've been thinking about it, and this obviously is a time that makes it even more important. It was the first thing I put on my list of things to do, called my attorney immediately, and still haven't heard back from them. But in any event, I would like to have the information so I can start the process inside my own, planning.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today. Andrew, do you think you got it working?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
All right. Yep, my name's Andy Glazer, Jim's brother.
Well, nice to have you. Thanks for joining us. Heather, we're just going around doing introductions. I'm going to unmute you. You want to just say hello?
Hey there, my name is Heather Santana, and I actually just had a baby, so all of these estate planning things are very top of mind as I have no idea what's going on.
Well, congratulations, and I think that's great to be part of the conversation, so you can at least have some armed with some information about next steps.
Great, thank you.
Samantha, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey guys, my name's Samantha Sanders. I work with Victoria and Realty Collective on communications and content writing over there. And the subject is pretty important to me. I went through this with my parents. So yeah, I think it's really important, and I'm glad that everybody here is taking part.
Thank you. We have one last person connecting, Denise, but their audio is still connecting. I'm just going to wait a second. But just going to outline, so we're going to give about a 15-minute presentation to go over the topics and then open it up for questions from all you guys, because I know, your personal situations are the most important. There is a chat on the bottom button there. It says chat in a little circle. Or square so if you have any questions, you can put them there so you don't forget them, just because I'm going to put everybody on mute until after we get through the presentation, but definitely want to give everybody an opportunity to ask their questions. My name is Victoria Alexander, and I am the founder of Realty Collective, a Brooklyn-based boutique real estate agency that we specialize in addressing the stereotypes associated with real estate and take an ethical approach in our practices to offer a more transparent experience. I have worked with Jessica Wilson, who is an attorney specializing in trust and estates in the neighborhood for a couple years now, and have developed a really great relationship with her. And we just are both really ethical and value-driven people. So I think it's always great to partner with people that have the same values. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to introduce herself and the topic and start getting into things. As people add, I'm just going to also just keep everybody on mute until the end. Thank you. Go ahead, Jessica, take it away. Do you want me, you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Wilson. I'm an attorney in the neighborhood. I have a practice on Columbia, and I practice in all the 5 boroughs and in Long Island. I want to first say that I know that this is a hard subject to talk about, even though I think everyone should talk about it. Death, money, it's something nobody wants to talk about. So I think that you should all give yourself some congratulations for actually doing this. And although I'm an attorney, and I normally do these advanced directives, is what we're talking about, in conjunction with a will or a trust. And I do think most people should see an attorney before doing any estate planning. I will be providing some documents as we go along to show you how you can do some of this at least by yourself, or at least get started and give you information to decide whether or not you actually need a lawyer to do this, or this is something you can do on your own. So there's been a lot of talk in the news about advanced directives, and that would be a living will, a healthcare proxy, and a power of attorney. And those are the 3 documents mainly we're going to talk about. Also, the nomination of guardian form, if you have minor children, congratulations on the baby. I can provide you a copy of that, which I actually have on my website. So basically, let's start with the living will. What is it? It is a document that states your end-of-life treatment wishes. This is a document that says how you want to live your last days. It's something that only comes into effect when you cannot make medical decisions for yourself. And it is basically a roadmap for loved ones and doctors about your decisions. And this is when you have a terminal illness, when you're in a vegetative state like a coma. It could talk about whether or not you want to receive certain drugs, even if these drugs shorten your life or prolong your life. If you want to get artificial nutrition, the feeding tube, whether you want hydration. And these are only if there's no hope of recovery. These are your wishes. I'm trying to think of the year. In law school, there was this famous case, and it went to the US Supreme Court. And this is what started everyone's interest in advanced directives. There was this young woman, her name was Nancy Cruzan, and the book is Long Goodbye. Basically what happened is she got into a terrible accident, and she was in a persistent vegetative state. And after 5 years, her family, and she had a feeding tube keeping her alive, and her family wanted the hospital to remove the tube. and they wanted to say goodbye. And the state of Missouri refused. I know Ashcroft was involved at the time, Ken Starr. Everyone was using this as a media case against, say, like a right to die. And so it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld the Missouri Supreme Court's ruling that you needed to show by clear and convincing evidence that Nancy wouldn't have wanted to live in that state. So eventually, after all the media calmed down, the family did prove that, and she was taken off the ventilator. But it was a very difficult decision for the family, and something that was private became very public. And this poor family, this working class family from Missouri, were put in a really difficult position nationally. So that was the reason that people started talking about advance directives. And basically, the living will, there's no specific form, right? You just have to, like when I do a living will as part of, wills and trusts that I do, I certainly have a form that I use for my clients, and we go through it, and we talk about the different wishes you have, and we include things, we take things out. But basically, you just have to show by clear and convincing evidence, that's the standard. You have to be very straightforward in what your wishes are. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. One of the ways is talking to your family about it. One of them is writing it down. Just write it down. What would you want if that were something terrible like that were to happen to you at the end of your life? You could put it on a video. It's just a roadmap. If you want to revoke a living will, basically you can just destroy it. That would probably be the easiest way. And like I said, there's no specific form. It's just providing the information. What it is not is a do not resuscitate order. That's separate. And I think I can get to a little bit of that. That's a medical decision you make. And it's not even a form I provide as a lawyer, because it's a decision you have to make with your doctor. You're making that with a healthcare worker. And the MOLST form, which I will provide you, that is also something that needs to be filled out with a healthcare worker, either by you or your surrogate. And there is a community do not resuscitate order that you could do at home when you're not in a hospital or a nursing home or something like that. But you have to sign it every 90 days. And again, there's liabilities involved. If you have this piece of paper, I'm not sure how powerful that would be if, say, an ambulance came to your house. But these are your decisions to make. And I think that's what's important. And it's important you share these decisions, which gets us to the healthcare proxy. Now, a healthcare proxy form basically is available from the New York State website, and I will give you a copy of that. It's different than the form I use, but it's a great form, and I think that's something you could do by yourself. I think the hard part with that is having the conversations and making those decisions. So a healthcare proxy is where you name an agent to make medical decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself. And it only comes into, you can only use it once you've been deemed incapacitated by a doctor. And that agent that you name, it can only be one person. You can have an alternate agent in case that person is unwilling or unable to act, but it has to be someone who's over 18 years of age, and that would be your agent to make those decisions. It cannot be a doctor or somebody who works, say, in a nursing home, unless that is a family member of yours. So it's a pretty important document. And the one thing I would say is that you need to make sure that whoever you name as your agent knows what your wishes are and knows how to engage with medical professionals, because that's what would be involved with that. Going back to the living will, your agent will not be able to make decisions about refusing hydration or artificial nutrition, the feeding tube, unless you have made that very clear. So what does that mean? It means you told your agent that. It's better to have other evidence, right? And the evidence here would be you're living well. And if you want to revoke if you want to revoke a healthcare proxy, you can inform anyone you've given the healthcare proxy to, or you can just sign a new one. I'll see if I could bring this up on the screen. Might not be able to see it here. I'll bring it up at the end. And it's something that I do as a matter of course when I'm doing these documents, but it's not something I would charge for as a standalone document, because it really doesn't involve too much expertise except starting the conversation. Let's see.
Jessica, while you're trying to do that, I have a question. So if you have a healthcare proxy, do you need a living will?
So you do. So the living will is a map. It's a map for your agent. And it also, sometimes your agent might need to make decisions that are temporary or that don't involve end of life, right? If you don't have a terminal condition, if you don't have, if you're not in a coma, then who's making these decisions for you? That would fall on your agent. If you become incapacitated due to dementia, due to having an accident, then you would still need the agent. Now, part of this also, I guess, maybe this is your question. Most people think, well, my family member can make decisions for me, and that's true. So there is the Family Healthcare Decisions Act, which allows family members and close friends, there's a priority, there's a list of who can make decisions for you. So if you're married, it would be your spouse and then your children. As long as somebody's 18 years of age or older, there is a priority list, siblings are on that list, who would get to make decisions if you can't. So yes, you need this. I think it's good to have. But yeah, there certainly is the Healthcare Decision Act that allows others to make these decisions for you, even if you don't have this. I would say that if you were going to do one, make sure that you speak to your agent, like I said, and if you have an alternate agent, speak to that person as well. And maybe even give them a copy of the documentation so that they could get medical information from doctors if they needed. Let's see, what else did I want to say about it? Oh, and if you get a divorce, it's automatically, any healthcare agent naming a spouse is automatically revoked in that case. There used to be a free site that you could upload this document to, but I think now they charge about $60. But if you wanted to put it someplace objective on the web, there are places that you could do that.
That's one thing I was really interested in talking about, is with all the changes in technology that are being forced on all these different industries. Mm-hmm. With the healthcare industry, do you think that now, because everything's going to be, there's going to be teledocs and everything, and they'll be recorded, right? For prosperity, I'm sure any teledoc, to make sure that it's being done correctly, is being recorded so that there is this record of things. Do you think that they're going to streamline and sort of systematize some of these things so that these forms, if you are under the care of somebody, that they're going to ask you to provide all of this during this? Like, is this process going to change because of the COVID-19? I just want your insight.
Well, some of the executive orders have allowed a lot of this to be done, remotely. We wouldn't have been able to do wills or notarize power of attorney or remote witness some of these documents that require two witnesses, right? That's one of the main things you have to understand with a healthcare proxy. You need to be witnessed by two people who are not the agent. So some things have evolved, but there's always going to be privacy issues, and there's always going to be HIPAA rules. So unless that is resolved, I don't really see that becoming the norm. I think that you're still going to have to witness documents on paper, such as this. But I do think it makes it a lot easier to record something. You could have a conversation with your family. You could have a family meeting. I put families together and we talk about all of the hard things, right? Assets and death. I mean, these are hard subjects. So we all get together and we talk about it. You could do that on Zoom. It could be recorded, and you could talk about, well, if this is, if this is where I was, this is what I want to happen. And that would be really good evidence if you ever had to, fight it out with a doctor or a hospital. Religion plays a big part of this, right? I mean, certain religions, they think that you shouldn't take, the feeding tube. Others think that, well, no, as long as you can stay alive, that's what you should do. And these are things that are very personal to each person. So I think they're important to talk about. So I do think technology makes it a lot easier to have evidence of that. And it's possible. I wonder, the MOLST form, which is a form you have to fill out with a healthcare professional, you have to, I don't know if they're doing that over Zoom. I would doubt it, because you have to really be with your doctor at that time. I don't really know if they're doing such things in the nursing homes.
It'll be interesting to see how everything changes.
I see there's a question.
Do you want to talk about power of attorneys first, or do you want to go on to start answering questions?
Oh, no, it's okay. I thought there was one. I think I saw the top of it, and it said something, how can you ensure the hospital is following this, I think is what she was saying.
Right.
You don't. What if it's a Catholic hospital and you want to be taken off? We might have to move you. It's happened. So this makes your wishes clear. That would be your lawyer or your family would be able to move you to a different hospital that would comply with your wishes. So that really is an issue. And you have to remember that the hospitals have liability. Even with, especially that's why do not resuscitate orders are something that you have to do in the hospital for the most part, because these are very serious decisions. And think about the liability that a hospital would have. Well, we're just not going to revive this person because so-and-so said this. Once, even your agent, if it's an end-of-life decision, like I said, the doctor has to find you incapacitated. And if it's an end-of-life decision, 2 doctors have to sign off on it. So that is actually, it's a very important issue for everyone, doctors as well. And I know I was reading just this week some articles from doctors urging people to do these documents, to even just write them down, do them yourself, so that they have some guidance, and so that they don't have to be the first person to talk to a patient about that. I mean, if you think about it, who would have thought this is going to happen? When you think about these documents, or when I would talk to my clients about them, I'm talking about personal tragedies or something that happened to your, to a friend of yours. That's why you're thinking about this. Or what if you were to get into a terrible accident? And that's the way we talk about it. I never would have thought that there would be this global event where everyone would be going through the same thing, and this would be a shared issue. And not even that you would be a patient and go into a hospital, or be a patient in a nursing home or assisted living facility and not have any access to your loved ones. Once you go into the hospital now, it's almost impossible for us to do these documents, because how are you going to get the technology to the person, especially in a nursing home? We have to rely on social workers, which have been great, but this is something I never would have thought happened.
Jim has a question about can attorneys easily work between states? Are there different rules in New York versus Massachusetts? Because I'm assuming he has a loved one in Massachusetts.
Yes, different states have different laws. So absolutely, you would have to follow the state where that person is a resident.
But could you, as a lawyer, work in that state if you were helping them do the paperwork? If the person resided in Massachusetts, would you be able to help them execute a healthcare proxy document or a living will?
No, I wouldn't, but I would be happy to find someone who's in the field that I vet first for you if you wanted to, sure. But no, I only practice in New York.
Do we want to talk a little bit about power of attorneys, and then we will open it up for questions?
Sure. So the durable power of attorney is a document in which you name an agent to take over all of your financial matters. Pretty much any financial issue that you can think of is one we put in this form. And this is a very powerful document. And you have to really trust the agent that you're naming, because it's called a durable power of attorney because it lasts even if you're incapacitated. So if you become incapacitated, this document is still in effect. And that's what's so great about it, that you do it while you're well and you can plan for your future. Now, your agent, you can name more than one agent. You can have multiple agents. You can have successor agents. And again, it comes into play immediately upon your agent signing it. So as soon as it's signed, someone can go into the bank and change your beneficiary, change your TOD accounts. They can change beneficiaries on your IRAs. They can institute lawsuits. They can pretty much do anything. It's a very, very powerful document. And again, this is a document that I would always have trouble explaining to my younger clients why they need it. I mean, they would basically put their spouse down just to have it. And but this pandemic brings a reason, is that what if somebody goes into the hospital and you need money, you need to apply for the PPP loan or the disaster loan for this person. How would you do that? And again, this was not anything I ever thought of before. When I think of the power of attorney, and the real reason you need it is older adults. So say you do become incapacitated due to dementia, something along those lines, and you need somebody to make financial decisions for you and medical decisions. If you don't have this document, if you don't have a power of attorney, you'll have to do what's called a guardianship proceeding. And that is in front of the court. It's intrusive, it's expensive, and it's work that I do, and there's great judges and there's great lawyers who do this, and some are appointed by the court, and everyone's trying to do the right thing for the alleged incapacitated person, but it is still expensive and it's still intrusive. It deals with civil liberties because it's taking somebody's right to make decisions for themselves away from them. And it can all be avoided with a power of attorney and either using the Healthcare Decision Act for the medical decisions or the healthcare proxy. So it's a pretty important document. So in 2009, the state legislators, they upended the power of attorney. They did a whole new form. It's a statutory form. And they basically wanted to make sure that nobody was taking advantage of with this document. And so right now, if you have a document that predates 2010, a power of attorney, it's still valid, but it just might be outdated because there's been so many changes to it. There's two parts to it. There's one part that is the statutory with some modifications. And again, this is a document that you can download. I think I might have a copy for everyone if they want at the end, but it's not going to have the modifications that attorneys put into it. And for that reason, I would say that this would be a document that unless your finances are very simple, you should speak to an attorney about, because there's a lot of different modifications that we put in that aren't in there. The second part of the document is what's called the statutory gift rider. And this allows the agent to make gifts for your assets. And say, for example, and this again has modifications that we put in, but right now I believe you can make a gift to someone who is of the statutory gift amount of $15,000. But, I make modifications in there that it could be more money, because what if you had to move a house? There's just everything's just fact specific, but you should have more powers in there than less, as long as you trust the person that you name as agent. They have to act in your best interest. They could certainly be sued and arrested if they commit fraud. You could also hold on to the form and not have your agent sign it until a certain time, until something happens. Maybe your attorney or somebody would hold on to it until you become incapacitated and a doctor signs off on it. There's different ways you can handle that. You can always have somebody sign it and then put it in a lockbox somewhere. But it's a document that is very powerful, and it's very important, I think, for people to have.
Well, I'm feeling very motivated to get I have none of this. I don't even have life insurance, so I should just start figuring some of this stuff out. I think the last thing that was on our list was the guardianship form.
So if you have minor children, there's, I don't know how I want to say this, because if you have minor children, there is a form that you can fill out, a nomination of guardian form, to name a guardian, somebody who you would want to take care of your child in case something were to happen to you and the other parent. So this is a form that I have posted, and it is it lets you name someone for each of your children. You'll put your names and date of birth, and you can have a successor guardian on there as well. And it allows for you to name a guardian in case of death, in case of incapacity, in case of administrative separation, for example, like at the border. It allows you to make all these allows you to name a guardian in all of those different situations. Now, this requires 2 witnesses, and it's a form that I provided about a month and a half ago on my website, because a lot of young parents can't afford a will, and they just wanted something to use in a pinch because they're scared and because all this going on. So I have provided it, but the issue with it is it's not the best way to go about leaving assets to minors. So that's for another talk, but if you want to email me and you have, I think actually if you go to my website, I do explain it as to best practice is to do a will, create a trust within your will, and you leave assets to children that way. But if you just feel like you need something now, then that certainly works. And I think you should at least know what's out there and what your options are.
Well, that was all very informative. We're going to open it up now for questions. So if you want to ask a question, just you can let me know, and I will just go to Jim's question first, which is that he's put in the chat, is does the power of attorney cover the role of healthcare proxy if that has not been designated separately? And I'm going to unmute you, Jim, in case you want to talk to Jessica about this.
So there are 2 different documents. Some states do combine them, and New York used to allow that, I believe, because I see them once in a while, but they have to be 2 separate documents.
Got it. Okay. Understood. It might be a little different in Massachusetts, and we're trying to work things out throughout our family with myself and my loved one here. who is a healthcare worker. And, you know, between the siblings, it's a good time to figure this out with everybody. With my mother and her sister are also living in the house in Salem, Mass. And they're in their 80s. So some urgency there. So thank you for this. This is very helpful.
Well, I'll
And
see if I can find an attorney for you over there who's doing remote witnessing. I'm not quite sure of Massachusetts law on this, if they've had an executive order similar to Cuomo's.
okay, well, that'll be interesting. And my brother's on here, and my mom was. I think she's just learning how to use Zoom, so I'm not sure how successful that was. She's gone now. But anyway, the other question we have is kind of complicated. So if somebody is a DPOA, designated power of attorney, for somebody, and that somebody is DPOA for a third party, if the middle somebody is incapacitated by proxy, does person 1 then become the DPOA of person 3, right?
No.
No?
No.
So it would fall to the state?
Well, what in New York, what would happen, there would be a guardianship proceeding, which starts with a petition as to you're alleging that this person is incapacitated and can't take care of their person or property, and that they need somebody appointed so that they're not harmed either financially or physically for lack of making medical decisions or poor medical decisions.
Okay, so if person 1 and person 3 were also in the same family, then that would help in the testimonial or whatever you'd have to go through for the court to listen to you.
So the court, yeah. So whoever, usually, well, it doesn't have to be. You can have a third party become the guardian, which I don't think is what you're talking about, which is usually an attorney. Or you could nominate, what you do is you nominate a guardian. It could be the petitioner, it could be somebody else. And there's a court evaluator who gets appointed by the court. And, you know, they come up with a report at the end, but they interview everyone. They look at all the finances. Like I said, it's pretty in-depth, and it's always for the alleged incapacitated person's well-being, but it's invasive.
Okay, so better to get it done before.
2 pieces of paper, you avoid that.
Okay, thank you.
That sounds like a good way to avoid things. It's just 2 single pieces of paper than having to go to court to go through all these things. Were there any other questions that anybody wanted to ask? No, it looks like everybody's questions have been asked. If all the questions have been asked, then we're just going to wrap things up. Jessica and I are going to send out a follow-up email with some of the forms. Oops, somebody's trying to get back in, Dennis. So we're going to send out a follow-up email with some of the forms and information that we talked about today, and a way to access Jessica if you do need to take next steps for any of this stuff. But she does have a couple of free resources she's going to provide to everybody that joined us today. And I thank everybody for joining for this really hard topic, because it's something that
Victoria?
Avoid. Yeah, Jim, you got anything else?
Just sorry, one last question. Any sort of just checklist? It sounds like something you're going to provide for the advanced directives questions. Is that something in one of the documents? Just, you know, what questions you should ask your loved one?
So go ahead, you Jessica. You can answer this.
So actually, I just looked at it yesterday for the first time, which is New York State's healthcare proxy form, and it's very comprehensive. So I think if you read that, there's directions on the top, and I'll be sending that to you. It really does involve a lot of the questions that you would ask, and I think it's a good form. It's different than my form, and like I said, it's not something I do standalone. I do it as part of mine, of a whole package, but it is something, you know, that you should do. But I think it's a pretty good form, so I think it'll answer all your questions. If you have questions, you feel free to email me.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. She'll send out a link to the healthcare proxy form that has all the questions on it that you're looking for. Okay, so then if we have asked all of our questions and we are ready to wrap up, we'll just look for our email and reach out to us directly if you need anything. And thank you guys, everybody, and please stay safe and healthy.
Yeah, stay safe.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Victoria.
You're welcome. Enjoy the
Thanks
rest of your
everyone
day.
for coming.
Bye-bye.